Jimmy Livingston, a boy, is born with no immunity at all. He must be kept in isolation because even a small amount of bacteria can kill him. He is unable to touch anything without first decontaminating it. Hence, in order to survive, he will have to spend his entire life inside a bubble-like plastic sphere. Mrs. Livingston, his mother, is overly protective of her son. In fact, he wasn't even permitted to return home until he was 4 years old. However, she and Mr. Livingston bring the youngster home in his bubble after he turned 4. He can enter his room because it too has a sizable bubble around it. The bubble's parents can touch him using a pair of protruding hands. All of his toys are kept inside the bubble after being thoroughly cleaned to remove even the tiniest of germs. Since then, Jimmy has resided in that space. Mrs. Livingston ends every bedtime story with the princess dying because she was set free because she never wants him to leave the bubble. Due to Mrs. Livingston's insistence that they are the only ones ever produced, he is only permitted to watch one television channel and read one magazine. She hugs her son and cuts his hair with the exposed arms as well. Because Mrs. Livingston is an extreme nationalist, she forces her views on Jimmy and only teaches him what she thinks is reasonable. Poor Jimmy, though, doesn't know any better, so he just goes along. The peculiar bubble boy is well known throughout the city, but this is not to his benefit. Instead, Jimmy witnesses the neighborhood kids mocking him outside his house while they wrap themselves in plastic wrap. They frequently get chased away by Mrs. Livingston. Jimmy only consumes home-cooked meals. Mrs. Livingston puts his food in a plastic tube with a decontamination system in it to kill the germs before Jimmy can get it. Jimmy has reached the age of 16. He describes how he was raised similarly to other children and how happy he is to receive an electric guitar rather than a car. Up until the day he sees Chole, a new girl his age, moving into his neighborhood while standing in front of his window. Despite growing to like the girl, he is powerless to stop it. In addition, he has no experience with either love or girls. Jimmy's mother, sensing his adoration, tells him the tale of the boy who died after touching the next-door whore. Jimmy keeps a close eye on Chole through his windows for the following few days. She observes him observing her as well. He says in his narration that he is aware that something is wrong with him but is unsure of what. He awakens one morning with an erection and is terrified. He hits himself with a bat without the concept's knowledge. He sobs and calls his mother. When Mrs. Livingston enters, she forces him to recite the Oath of Allegiance until he becomes calm. Jimmy is mocked by Chloe's posh friends, who refer to him as the Bubble Boy. She appears hostile toward him. She knocks on the Livingston's door one day, and Mr. Livingston opens it for her. She is enthralled when she notices the extensive network of plastic tubes throughout the house. She follows the tube until she arrives in Jimmy's room. Jimmy is taken aback and uneasy because he has only spoken to his mother. When Chloe speaks to him, she compliments him on his guitar. Jimmy makes an attempt to teach her how to play it with the exposed hands. In the middle of it, he begins reciting the Pledge of Allegiance. The two have been hanging out every day since that day. Although Mrs. Livingston dislikes their friendship, she is powerless to intervene. They then spend time together in a montage. She even invites children into his room for Halloween and gives him a guinea pig and a ball for his birthday. On her birthday, Chloe enters Jimmy's room through the windows while intoxicated. She tries entering the bubble while claiming she is unable to avoid him any longer. But before she can enter, she faints. Chloe's prom night is shown in a scene cut. Jimmy is devastated when her perverted boyfriend Mark arrives to pick her up. Jimmy accepts Mark's offer of a cigarette, but he is unsure of what it is. Jimmy once witnessed Mark and Chloe having a sexual encounter through his windows. Chloe enters Jimmy's room the very next day to show him her engagement ring. She had received a marriage proposal from Mark. She has come to tell Jimmy that they will get married this weekend at Niagara Falls. Jimmy is dissatisfied, but he masks it with his face. Jimmy doesn't care about the gift she gave him and placed inside his decontamination tube. Instead, he returns the guinea pig to her and motions for her to leave. With tears in her eyes, Chloe departs. Later, when Jimmy opens the present, he discovers an I love you snow globe inside. He screams her name in shock and decides to travel to Niagara Falls to prevent the wedding. He makes a portable bubble shield for himself after much effort, and it works. Then, without his parents' knowledge, he sneaks out of the house. Jimmy, who is excited to be running for the first time, arrives at the bus stop and approaches a passerby to request a bus ticket. Jimmy, however, neglected to pack any cash. He is struck by a bus as he tries to cross the street in a distressed state. His bubble saves him as he falls to the ground in a flying arc. He is offered a ride by the bus passengers when they emerge from the vehicle. Jimmy accepts it happily, but learns later that the group is a religious cult. He points it out, and they violently eject him from the bus. When the cult group gets there, the leader proclaims a round man inside a globe to be the sentient savior of God. When the group realizes that Jimmy saved them, they go in search of him to free him from the globe. In the meantime, Jimmy meets Slim, a biker. Jimmy informs him that the love of his life has wed another person. Slim, who is also impressed, then introduces him to Wildfire, an old flame whom he still loves. The two travel together to Niagara Falls after he offers Jimmy a ride. Mrs. Livingston panics when she discovers Jimmy missing at home. Mr. and Mrs. Livingston began their search for Jimmy because it would take the police 24 hours to investigate Jimmy's disappearance. Slim and Jimmy arrive in Vegas and take a break. Even though Jimmy only has 2 days before the wedding, they have a great time gambling. He departs the club after dropping Slim off, steals a scooter, and rides off on it. After some time has passed, Jimmy finally encounters his parents' vehicle, who attempt to stop him from fleeing. Jimmy has a mishap because he is in a rush. Fortunately, though, he is launched into a moving train by his bubble. He manages to get away from his mother, but he now finds himself in a train with freak show talents. The freaks inform him that Dr. Freak, their employer, keeps them imprisoned and uses them in his freak show. Jimmy is introduced to Dr. Freak, a dwarf. With his bubble, he unintentionally knocks the man to the ground while freeing the other freaks. After that, he keeps traveling toward Niagara Falls. However, he finds that he can hardly operate a scooter any longer, so he goes to a restaurant to hail a ride. There, Push Pop is victimized by a group of police officers. When Jimmy informs them that he is immune, they immediately believe he is infected and flee the area. In the commotion, the restaurant catches fire and Push Pop offers Jimmy a ride. Moreover, he consents to drive him to Niagara Falls. When Mrs. Livingston contacts Dr. Freak elsewhere, he informs her that Jimmy is traveling to Niagara Falls. She calls Chole in a rage and yells at her for making Jimmy flee. The freaks outside steal her car as she speaks with Dr. Freak. Jimmy and Push Pop are traveling when they run over a cow in the middle of the road. Push Pop is upset because cows are a symbol of God in his religion, but Jimmy informs him that his religion is false in accordance with his mother's advice. Push Pop is offended by this, so he abandons Jimmy. Then, for some reason, Jimmy makes it to New York. He approaches an elderly man by the name of Pippi and begs for a ride. The following morning when Jimmy awakens, the man is still operating the vehicle. As soon as Jimmy notices Pippi is motionless, the car crashes into a billboard. Jimmy makes a call to Chole while shopping. Informing Jimmy to give up because he is about to wed Chole in an hour, Mark picks up the phone. He calls his mother and asks her to come pick him up because he is now completely hopeless. His parents both arrive by car and help him get into the vehicle. Mr. Livingston asks Jimmy how it feels to be outside for the first time as Mrs. Livingston leaves for the restroom. Jimmy is advised by Mr. Livingston to keep trying and not give up. Jimmy heeds his advice and rushes to halt the nuptials. When Mrs. Livingston notices this, they drive after him. The cult group also locates Jimmy at this time and follows him. Along with his motorcycle buddies, Slim arrives to save Jimmy. Slim and Mrs. Livingston, his former flame Wildfire, lock eyes. It turns out that they are all traveling on a runway. Jimmy boards a flight along with an elderly pilot as it takes off. Jimmy falls into the waterfall during their flight to Niagara Falls due to a plane crash. Fortunately, his bubble prevents him from drowning. He emerges from the water somehow, then dashes to the wedding. As Chole and Mark exchange vows in the chapel, Jimmy walks in and declares his love for her. He puts his life in danger and tears his bubble open to kiss Chole because he knows this is his last chance to convince her. But immediately after, he loses consciousness. Mr. and Mrs. Livingston also make their way to the location as Chole tries to awaken him. When Mr. Livingston asks her to tell everyone the truth, Mrs. Livingston laments the loss of her son. Jimmy abruptly awakens when Mrs. Livingston embarrassingly reveals that he is healthy. It turns out that she had been lying to him for all these years in order to shield him from the evils of the outside world. When his mother says that she did it to keep him safe, Jimmy is shocked but forgave her. As everybody applauds, he finally encircles Chole. A few months later, flashback. Jimmy and Chole are getting hitched. Everyone he encountered on his travels is present at the wedding. Slim, Mrs. Livingston, and Mr. Livingston are now a trio. Jimmy and Chole are seen leaving in a car for their honeymoon as the film comes to a close. Subscribe for more videos like this, turn on notifications, and leave a like to help the channel out. Thank you for watching.